Hey, this is Clint, and this is 15 Minutes for God. Down here in sunny Tampa now, and it's about almost 80 degrees. We've survived all the storms, and I've been here with my son. And in looking at some of my videos, I figured out I screwed up one. You guys have probably seen me screw up a bunch of stuff since I started this. But we did one that was entitled number 30, and it actually was number 29 loaded twice. So I just killed the second number 30 and I'm starting over on it. And this one was to be called Abram and a Few Guys Take a Walk. And a couple of things, I don't know, I think maybe God had it planned this way too, because I learned something else about the chapter and I'm going to change it up a little bit. But my first thought on it was that a lot of people think the Bible's too hard to understand, or maybe they don't get all the meanings or whatever. And since this program was geared for people predominantly, or more importantly, I guess, people that weren't already Christians. I want Christians to look at this, and I want you to help me spread it and all that kind of stuff. But this was mainly geared for folks that maybe hadn't gone to church and were afraid to go to church and that kind of thing. And they're afraid to read the Bible because they read it and it gets kind of heavy to them. But this one chapter very quickly shows you how you can take little bits and pieces and find out things that make a lot of sense. And if you pray about them and ask God about them, He'll send you the meaning. And after I did this thing and figured out I screwed it up today, a week or so ago, I'd already been thinking about where I was going next, and so this piece ties right into that, makes it work even better. So it helped me as well. So we're in chapter 12 of Genesis, and like I probably mentioned before, we ain't got very far. I said I was going to start at the beginning and read till the end, and that's all I got's time. And we were only on Genesis 12, so we got a long way to go. So I guess that's kind of like insured job security or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, I'm going to read a little bit here in 12, and then we're going to talk about it. What I had in the original post said chapter 12 is header says the call of Abram. It says, "Then the Lord told Abram, leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. I will cause you to become the father of a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and I will make you a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you." So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed. As the Lord had instructed him, and Lot went with him. Lot was his nephew. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people who had joined his household at Haran, and he finally arrived in Canaan. Traveling through Canaan, they came to a place near Shechem and set up camp beside the oak at Morah. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. That's pretty interesting. Canaanites live in Canaan. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I am going to give this land to your offspring." And Abram built an altar there to commemorate the Lord's visit. After that, Abram traveled southward and set up camp in the hill country between Bethel on the west and Ai. I don't know how they pronounce that. It's just Ai. Maybe that's what it is. On the east. Then he built an altar and worshipped the Lord. Then Abram traveled south by stages toward the Negev. Now this is where I'd stopped in the other section, because it was the beginning of the walk. And what I was looking at was, this is just a very short paragraph. The whole chapter only has 20 verses, and this was in 9. But it tells you a whole lot about what God has expected. Because if you go back up into chapter 11, which is some earlier things we talked about, Terah, who is his father, had headed out to find this promised land, I guess, and he got to, let's see where he got to. He got to Haran, and he stopped there. and that's where he stayed. And Lot's and Abram and all his family and those folks lived there for a long time. And actually, Terah, his father, died there when he was 205 years old. So he never got to where he was supposed to end up. Well, then God comes along again and tells Abram to go ahead and pick up and head out. First thing he does, and that's what it is, first thing he does here, he says, well, I want you to get up and get out, get walking, I'm going to make you a big nation. And Abram doesn't say why, doesn't say where, he doesn't say, how do I Google it, he doesn't say, where's the map, he just gets up and takes his crew and heads on out. So that's one thing you can see here, is God is giving an example of when I talk to you, and I ask you something, and I expect something, or like when you read in here, and he tells you this is the way you're supposed to live, you're supposed to do it, because God's in charge. He sets the laws. He made everything. He made all the billions and billions of folks that are crawling around this planet, and it says he knows every hair on our head. That's amazing to me right there, that he could put up with all the crazy people, the millions and billions that have ever been born, and he's in charge of them all. And he just took the time to take care of it. So he set all the rules because he's the only perfect one, and he wants us to follow those rules. Well, that's the first thing Abram did. Second little sentence here was, he's already 75 years old. Think about it. I'm working on 68. And I can hardly get around some days. And this guy's 75, and he's supposed to be heading out across the desert. But he did. He didn't question it. He didn't say why. He didn't say, hey, where am I going to find gas? He just went. It says he took his wife Sarah, his Lot, and all the stuff that God had given him, and he headed out. And he said he finally arrived in Canaan. Now, Canaan was the land that most of that is on the west side of the Jordan River, and between there and the Mediterranean, and that's the main part of the property that God said he was going to give his family to be their permanent home to establish the Israelites. And it was filled with Canaanites. Canaanites were one of the descendants of Ham, from Noah, the one that was cursed. And so they were running all over, and they're believing other gods, and just all the rest of these folks around here, they don't believe in our God. The majority of the folks didn't even know maybe that our God existed, or if they did, they didn't really care. They were believing in all these other gods that they wanted to believe in. So he's landing in this land that's full of Canaanites that probably really didn't like him. He's living in tents, and he gets to this spot. Well, what's he do? He doesn't, when he gets there, he doesn't build a town. He doesn't go out and battle people. He doesn't look and see what else he can put in his pocket. He builds an altar to God, to worship God. He gives him thanks for, well, I guess maybe, hey, get me here. You got me where you're going to get me to begin with. It says he built an altar there that commemorate the Lord's visit. So, and that's my dog barking in the back. That's not my stomach. So he's out there running around chasing nothing because he's almost as old as I am, and he barks at the wind and everything else that's out here. So I apologize for him because he don't listen to me much no more. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't listen to me much anymore. But that's okay. But at any rate, that's the first thing he does, is celebrate God. And that's what God wants us to do, is to also give him the glory. It says, after that, Abraham traveled southward. He went on down, was moving into the bushes and stuff out there. And he stopped at a second place, and he built another altar. So he's got God on his mind all the time. And that's the thing that God wants you to do. That's, to me, that's what you should get out of that chapter. That when God tells you to do something, God says he's not going to do anything for our that's not for our good. He's not going to do anything that's going to get us into trouble. He's not going to do anything that's going to hurt us. His goal is to build us up and to protect us as long as we follow his rules. And he wants us to give him thanks for that, because that's his glory. I mean, He assumes to me that father role. He is the ultimate father. He's teaching us how to live and what we need to do. We're made in his image, so he's getting our mind and our soul also in his image as well. Now, the other part of this chapter, which I didn't talk about, it takes a little twist. And this is what the Spirit was talking to me about last night. It says, the header on it says Abram and Sarah in Egypt. So when they get down here to this Negev area, that's a little bit north of where Egypt is. And Egypt is the big dog all this time. I mean, they were building the pyramids and had the pharaohs and the big armies and all that kind of stuff. And it says, at that time, there was a severe famine in the land. So this is in Canaan. So Abram went down in Egypt to wait it out. And as he was approaching the borders of Egypt, Abram said to Sarah, "You're a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. But if you say you're my sister, then the Egyptians will treat me well because of their interest in you, and they will spare my life." So for some reason, Abram gets cold feet. Now, one of the things that comes out back then was that it was the guy with the big stick was the guy that was in charge. So Abram's thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm getting down here with these Egyptians and the Pharaoh, and they got the big stick, and I may have some wealth, but I'm the little dog. I don't have an army or none of that stuff. And these guys had multiple wives and did all kinds of crazy things that I don't know that God was really keen on all that stuff, but again, he let free will take reign. That's one of the things that I get out of this. And they let them do kind of what they wanted. And they have to come to their senses. Well, he gets cold feet, and instead of praying to God, saying, "Hey, God, how do I get through this, or can you help me, or whatever," he says, "Just pretend you're my sister, and we'll be just fine." Well, here's what just fine happened. And sure enough, when they arrived in Egypt, everyone spoke of her beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to the king, the Pharaoh, and she was taken into his harem. Now, harem is what title of a bunch of different wives. So the king took Abram's wife to be in his harem and become one of his wives. Now, it doesn't say whether he ever slept with her or whatever, but it says, "Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, cattle, donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent a terrible plague upon Pharaoh's household because of Sarah, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called for Abram and accused him sharply. 'What is this you've done to me?' he demanded. 'Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why were you willing to let me marry her, saying she was your sister? Here is your wife. Take her and be gone.' Pharaoh then sent them out of the country under armed escort, Abram and his wife with all their household and belongings." Now here's the quandary on this one. Abram gets cold feet. He says he's not married. That's his sister. Pharaoh and all them, they're all into getting everything they can. They got all the palaces. It says they give them all these sheep and cattle and donkeys. They're rich. And at the same time, they were treating women about the same way they treated cattle. So he had multiple wives, and they called them, some of them were called wives, some of them were called concubines, which is, to me, is like an in-house sex slave. I don't know, but that they weren't really regarded as wives, but they were sleeping together and that kind of stuff. Well, he sees her, thinks she's great looking, takes her into his house. Abram's afraid to stand up and fight for her, but God then sees that. I don't know if he talked to Pharaoh directly. He must have, because if he says, "Well, why didn't you tell me it was your wife?" But God sends a plague against his people, and must have told him that that's why he was doing that, because you took his wife. Well, Pharaoh immediately does the right thing and says, "Here, get your wife back, get your tail out of here." And so he did. Now, my quandary to me is, why didn't God punish Abram for that? And when the Spirit was talking to me, I believe, while I was thinking of it, it basically said to me, well, I think the reason that was done that way is because Abram is still in training. Abram did a good thing when he built his altars and he was on the right side of God. He just got afraid. And when he got afraid, instead of staying on the right road, like it says in the 23rd Psalm, you follow the road and God has his rod to beat off the bad guys and he has his staff to direct you in the right way. Well, Abram stepped off the wrong side of the road. Well, God, because he was his father, my gut feeling is he didn't have Sarah have sexual relations with Pharaoh. It doesn't say anything about it. But he stopped it before it happened. And he went back to Abram and had him, through Pharaoh, say, hey, take your wife back and be a man. And hopefully Abram got the lesson for the next times down the road. And I believe that that's what God does for us, is he gives us opportunities because of the free will. He allows us to make mistakes. But then if we see what those mistakes are and we revert back to where we should be and we ask for forgiveness and we ask for his help, he will take us back in because he's training us like a father should. And that was one little chapter, and it wasn't a whole lot, but it's a pretty important lesson. Because the majority of the people that were worshiping all these weird gods, the gods were telling you to sacrifice your kids and have sex with everybody that's on the corner and give them all your money and all this kind of baloney. And most of these gods were just pieces of wood and stone that we made that didn't exist. It's just crazy stuff. It's just people's made up things of what a god should be. And it was their own pride saying, well, hey, again, it's that I got the big stick. I'm going to do whatever I want. That's not what our God is. He's the God of love. He's the God of peace. He's the God of salvation. So that's the end of that one. It's kind of short and sweet, and I apologize that I screwed it up on the recording from the other day, but at least we'll get it back in, and we'll talk about some more of this Abram movement down the road here probably tomorrow. I'm going to try to kickstart this thing and get them running a little bit. But I want to go right into prayer. Father, bless us. Help us learn from all your wills and what we need to be doing. I've got my son and daughter still having major issues with their health. Take care of them. I've got a young woman in my family who's having marital issues and has 2 little children. Please be with them and help them find their way and put them back on the right road, and whatever way it turns out, take care of her and him and those little kids that are involved. And just I met a man yesterday who has a daughter that had cystic fibrosis. Please watch over her. You know who she is, and help her get how she needs to be improved as best she can. Had one of my wife's uncles was 80 this past week. Keep him kicking and doing what he needs to be doing. Thank you for letting me have a great anniversary this week. Watch over my 2 aunts that need help, and just keep an eye on them. They're good Christian ladies. I want to just ask a little bit of prayers for me. I've had, they were diagnosed with congestive heart failure. Well, now they're sending me to what I would call a electrician. I might be needing a pacemaker or something. I'm not sure. I'm going to find that out next week. But I would appreciate it if you could help me do whatever needs to be done. But my wife asked me after they talked about this the last couple of days if I was scared. I told her no, because I'm not, because you're in charge. And if I'm here, you're in charge. If I'm not here, I know where I'm going to be. I'll be with you, and you're still going to be in charge. I told her that I knew she was a Christian, and if I ended up first, then she would be with me later. I'd just be getting ready for her to show up, and something prepared. So anyway, just I know there's other unspoken prayers out there for folks. Please take care of them. I don't have to mention them. You know who they all are. But we ask everything in Jesus' name. I give you all the praise and the glory, Father. Amen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you listening. Send in your comments. We got one in here on comments now. That's what I want. If I'm not saying the right stuff or you have questions, send them in. We'll talk about them. We may find out other things. It's like the Bible says, when two or more people come together in my name, there I'll be. Well, that's how we learn. We all learn and grow. So I'll take all the help I can get. So if you want to send comments in or concerns, definitely prayer requests. We're not going to mention any names unless you tell me that's what you want mentioned. And just if you like us, give us that thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, that's good too. I'll try not to mess any more of them up, but hey, just be prepared. It'll probably happen. And there's mosquitoes all out here and they're flying around. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.